true. Yeah, it's possible.
She was muted, so we weren't able to talk to her.
Right, we weren't
So
doing
we
it.
don't know if she could hear us or not.
Yeah, and I apologize for being late. That time got a big.
Right, yeah, a different kind of Sunday. So, just saying that, Abel's blood cries to God from the ground. Keep that in mind. It shows up later in the story. Then, to try to cut to the chase, Eve has a third child, another son. His name is Seth. Seth means granted. And it's this, the sense is that Eve has learned her lesson, that she realizes that children are a gift of God, not something that we create. So then last week covered the story of Abraham and Isaac particularly. Let me bring us back to the third verse of the 12th chapter of Genesis, where Abraham is told that by God that through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Remember that too, because that is a significant, well, I'll say there are two particularly significant lines to remember, verses to remember. One is that one. Through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. But also, don't forget Cain's question to God when God confronts Cain. Am I my brother's keeper? And that's left unanswered, but I think is answered in the aggregate of the book of Genesis. So again, Abraham is promised that all the families of the earth will be blessed through him and through his progeny. Along the way, when the promise is delayed, Abraham continues to remind God that God promised that through him, they'd have lots of babies. Through him and Sarah, they'd have family to bless the world. Sarah gets impatient, says, take my handmaid Hagar. He's happy to, he volunteers. Hagar has the child Ishmael, as you remember, and is so happy with Ishmael that when God reminds Abraham he's going to have children at the age of 100 or 99 or whatever it is, Abraham tries to talk God off the ledge, saying, let Ishmael live in thy sight. I mean, we can do it fine. This is good enough. This is great. Yeah, he can be the blessing. And God says, no, you and Sarah will have a child. And then God waits until they are, and this is the most important part of the story, God waits until it is absolutely impossible that no one would imagine that two people this old could have children, to have the baby, so that they won't be tempted to think that they created the baby. This is it. The whole thing of Genesis is predicated on thinking you own your children. And whether Abraham worships the gift that God gives, the son, or the giver of the gift, which is God. Because, as I said last week, there's an interesting line where Jesus tells the uppity Pharisees, God could make children from these children of Abraham. Oh, that's right. Pharisees said, we are children of Abraham. And, as if that meant something. And he said, yeah, God could make children of Abraham from these stones. Jesus says that. That's why. Meaning, Jesus understands the story of Abraham on his own terms. So let's look at the story of Joseph, because this pulls everything together. Come on. Anyway, so we're looking at chapter, we're gonna look at quite a few verses from Genesis chapter 37 in the story of Joseph. And you all remember Joseph's story? What do you remember from Joseph's story?
Yeah, she coat.
The coat.
Oh, yeah.
The coat, which one?
Many colors.
Many colors is one translation. Another one is with long sleeves. And I don't know how you confuse many colors from long sleeves. I'm not the Hebrew scholar. I should be. So, but that's how that's been translated down the ages. So that you remember that part. Do you remember what went with that? The enmity that went with the giving of the coat?
Brothers are all jealous.
Right. My favorite. He's his father's favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the Smothers Brothers? Tommy said, "Mom, like you best." Remember that? You got a dog, all I got was a crummy chicken. It's a ridiculous bit. It comes to mind. So chapter 37, if you've got a Bible, we'll look at,
And there's a bunch on the counter
there are a few on the counter. 4 left.
and more over on the bookshelf.
So chapter 37, beginning at verse 12. Now his, meaning Joseph's brothers, went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I'll send you to them." He answered, "Here I am." So he said, "Go now, see if it's well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring word back to me." So he does just that. And he is told where his brothers are. Verse 18, they saw him from a distance, the brothers did. And before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer." Remember, Joseph was someone who could interpret dreams. "Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of these pits. Then we shall say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father." So Reuben at this point is going against the "killed my brother," against the Cain and Abel story. Okay. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the long robe with sleeves, according to this translation. And they took him and threw him into a pit. Pit was empty. There was no water in it. So don't worry, he's not going to drown. Okay, then verses 25. Then they sat down. See you later if you guys need to go. Oh, I understand.
We don't like the story. We have to leave.
Right. I think that's hilarious.
Thank you.
Okay, you bet. Then they said,
It'll be recorded. I'll put it up on the web if you want to
well,
watch.
that's right. Thank you. Then they sat down to eat and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels carrying gum balm and resin on their way to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brothers, this is another brother, Judah, remember him now. Judah said to his brother, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" Remember, Abel's blood cried from the ground. "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." So he's kind of going against this, my brother's keeper. He has some sense that he's his brother's keeper. And his brothers agreed. And when some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him out of the pit, sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. And when Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes, because why? Reuben had meant this to rescue him, right? He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy's gone. Where can I turn?" Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, dipped the robe in his blood. Okay. Thus, I'm looking at the last verse. Thus his father bewailed him. Oh, meanwhile, the Midianites had sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, captain of the guard. Okay, so that's what happened to Joseph. Now, skip with me all of chapter 38 for a moment and look at the first verse of 39. Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. So you get an interesting repetition. And what I would like to suggest is this is a theme in the story. Chapter 37 jumps immediately to the beginning. The end of chapter 37 jumps immediately to the first verse of 39. I would like to posit that chapter 38 was inserted in the middle, which is not at all unusual in literature. Novelists do this all the time. Oh, I'm going to put something in there. This is a piece that's really important to understanding how it all turns out. While some notes just say this is an old tradition that was inserted here because it was important to one of the tribes of Israel, I think there's more to it than that. So let's look at chapter 38 carefully. Somebody else want to read the first 11 verses of chapter 38?
It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and settled near a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. He married her and went into her. She conceived and bore a son, and he named him Er. Again, she conceived and bore a son, whom she named Onan. Yet again, she bore a son, and she named him Shelah. She was in Chezib when she bore him. Judah took a wife for Er with his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her. Raise up offspring for your brother. But since Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, he spilled his semen on the ground whenever he went into his brother's wife, so that he would not give offspring to his brother.
That's a good place to stop it. Okay, so what's going on? Three sons of Judah. First one dies because God killed him. Okay. Try to get over that. Don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I think it's just a plot device to get him out of the way. Could have said he was hit by a cart that was out of control. But anyway, it's what it is. Second son doesn't want to have sexual relations with his brother's wife. Why?
Because the sons won't be his.
The sons won't be his, right? Let me see. I want to find the note on this. Like Onan in this story, brothers frequently resisted this responsibility. Oh, wait a minute. Judah's instructions to Onan, while strange to the modern reader, are based on Israelite custom designed to protect the widow and promote stability within families. Since married women were dependent on their husbands for economic support or on their sons in the event of the husband's death, a woman without husband or sons like Tamar was essentially without support. To protect the childless widow, an Israelite statute requiring that the deceased husband's brother have sexual relations with his widowed sister-in-law in order to produce children for her, who would then be regarded as the children of the woman's deceased husband, would provide economic support for their mother. Like Onan in this story, brothers frequently resisted this responsibility, probably because they considered their brother's sons to be rivals to their son's share in the family's inheritance and estate.
And presumably they would be heirs of the first son. So
I guess that's it. Okay, so, but a little footnote, a little literary footnote. In the King James Version, it actually reads, but since Onan knew that the offspring could not be his, he spilleth his seed upon the ground. Dorothy Parker named her parakeet Onan because he spilleth his seed upon the ground. Okay, that's Onan. Verse 10. You want to continue reading for us there, Joanne?
What he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. That's the second son.
Yeah,
Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he feared that he too would die like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house.
okay. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah's time of mourning was over, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira, the Adulamite. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear the sheep, she put off her widow's garments, put on a veil, wrapped herself up, and sat down at the entrance to Anaim, which is on the road to Timnah. She saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him in marriage, which was supposed to happen, right? When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her at the roadside and said, come, let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, what will you give me that you may come into me? And he answered, I will send you a kid from the flock. And she said, only if you give me a pledge until you send it. He said, what pledge shall I give you? And she replied, your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. And then she got up and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood again. When Judah sent the kid by his friend, the Adulamite, to recover the pledge from the woman, he could not find her. He asked the townspeople, where is the temple prostitute? That's interesting. Actually, the Hebrew says holy woman. And this is strange to understand because the note here below it reads that there's absolutely no evidence there were temple prostitutes in this place at this time or anywhere. It's just so I don't know what that means. Where is the temple prostitute who is Anaim by the wayside? But they said, no prostitute's been here. So we returned to Judah and said, I have not found her. Moreover, the townspeople said, no prostitute's been here. Judah replied, let her keep the things as her own. Otherwise, we will be laughed at. You see, I sent this kid and you could not find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has played the whore. Moreover, she's pregnant as a result of whoredom. And Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned, which is very thoughtful of him. As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, who was the owner of these who made me pregnant. And she said, take note, please, whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. And then Judah acknowledged them and said, she is more in the right than I am, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not lie with her again. And when the time of her delivery came, I'm not going to read that, but anyway, you get the idea, right? She did what she could to right the wrong. And who could blame her? Not even Judah. But keep in mind what happened there. Judah trying to control things by keeping his sons from fulfilling the particular law that was there to benefit women who were widows. So now we're going to go down to chapter 42.
Okay, I would ask
Yeah,
you a
go ahead.
question.
Sure.
Why was this stuck in there?
Well, we'll see.
Oh, you're coming in.
Yeah, I want to explain. Yeah, it's a long, let me give a long answer. Yes.
thought that's what they were saying, that it wasn't Judah who was preventing his sons from doing, but the sons themselves who didn't want to do it.
That's right, the sons are doing, but no, Judah gets the blame for not giving the third son.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want the last son
To die.
to die, so, because where would the future be for him, right? Okay, so moving on to chapter 42. Somebody want to read 42, and to the first 25 verses of 42?
When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another? I have heard," he said, "that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel were among the other people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan.
Let me just jump in to say, there's a famine in the land. Everybody is dying. People have begun to die. What happened was, in Egypt, everyone's going to go to Egypt for grain because of Joseph's dream that said, we're going to have 7 years of famine. So but they aren't going to start for 7 years from now. So we're going to spend 7 years building grain silos and storing grain so that we'll have plenty. What happens is, first year of the shortage, people come to Egypt and buy grain and take it home with their surplus cash. Second year, they come with their animals and the things they own and sell those for grain and take those back. And the third year, what do? They come to Egypt and they volunteer to be slaves because they don't have anything else to give. And that's the down and dirty idea of the slavery in Egypt due to this policy, ironically coming from Joseph, who was the one who understood a dream that was given to save the world. How's that? So let's pick up where you left off.
Now Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is just as I have said to you. You are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else, as Pharaoh lives, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, "Alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us." Then Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy, but you would not listen? So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them, and he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to carry their bags with grain, to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. This was done for them.
Okay. You get the idea? What's going on here? Jacob is the father of all these sons. And he's kept one at home. Remember who that is?
Benjamin,
Benjamin. Why is he keeping Benjamin at home?
I'm safe.
Keep him safe. He had like 10 children by his first wife, Leah, and then he had 2 with Rachel, who he loved the most. That was Joseph, not Joseph. Yeah, Joseph and Benjamin. And Joseph's dead in his eyes, so he wants the favorite son of the last son of the favorite wife to stay alive. So he's doing pretty much what Judah had done, right? By saying, I'm not going to give Tamar, my 3rd son, to marry because that may be the end of him, right? So this is all a bit about fathers trying to protect their children. And we see that through the lens of Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael in the same way. So now on to verse 26. They loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. When one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at a lodging place, he saw his money at the top of the sack. He said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in my sack." At this, they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" Where did that come from? It's incriminating, right? When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and charged us with spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of your father. One is no more, and the youngest one now is with our father in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, 'By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, Simeon. Take grain for the famine of your household and go your way. Bring your youngest brother back to me, and I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will release your brother to you, and you may trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was a bag of money. When they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. And their father Jacob said to them, 'I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin. All this has happened to me.'" He's a whiner. Then Reuben said to his father, "You may kill this is Reuben's answer. Remember, Reuben was the one who said, don't kill Joseph. Then Reuben said to his father, "You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you." That was nice of him, wasn't it? Doesn't say kill me. "Put him in my hands and I will bring him back to you." But he said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead and he alone is left. If harm should come to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol." Okay. But problem is the drought continues and they're all going to die, and Benjamin's going to die anyway. So it's pretty clear they got to take him down. So chapter 44 We'll start with verse 14. Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house while he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Oh, let's start at the beginning of 40. Then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the top of his sack. This is the same sort of ruse that happened before, after they'd gotten what they needed in Egypt. Put my cup, the silver cup, in the top of the sack of the youngest one, who is Benjamin, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. And as soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. And when they had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his steward, go follow after the men. And when you overtake them, say to them, why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? Is it not from you that my Lord drinks? Does he not indeed use it for divination? You have done wrong in doing this. So he's setting them up for revenge, is what it seems like. When the man overtook him, he repeated those words to them. They said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servant that they should do such a thing. Look, the money that we found in the top of our sacks, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. Why then would we steal silver or gold from the Lord's house? Should it be found with any of your servants, let him die. Moreover, the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves. Interesting. He said, even so, in accordance with your words, let it be. He with whom it is found shall become my slave, but the rest of you shall go free. Then each one quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack, and he searched, beginning the eldest, ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. Then each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. Judah and his brothers, Judah is mentioned here, and his brothers came to Joseph's house while he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. And Joseph said to them, what deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that one such as I can practice divination? And Judah said, what can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Here we are then, my Lord's slaves, both we and also the one in whose possession the cup is found, meaning Benjamin. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the one in whose possession the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. So he said, I'm going to keep your brother. Then Judah stepped up to him and said, and this is all of the book of Genesis leads up, I think, to this moment. Then Judah stepped up to Joseph and said, oh, my Lord, let your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ears, and do not be angry with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servants, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, child of his old age. His brother, Joseph, is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me so that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. And then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more. And when we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we can't go down. Only if Benjamin goes with us will we go down, Dad, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother's with us. And then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, Joseph, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I've never seen him since. If you take this one, Benjamin, also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in sorrow to Sheol. Now, therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up with the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became surety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave. Your servant remain as a slave to my Lord in place of the boy. That is, Judah is saying, let me remain a slave to you, Pharaoh's servant. He doesn't know it's Joseph. In place of Benjamin, and let Benjamin go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy Benjamin isn't with him? I fear to see the suffering that would come upon my father. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him. And he cried out, send everyone away from me. So no one stayed with him. And when Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it, Joseph said to his brothers, I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive? And his brothers could not answer him. So dismayed were they at his presence. And then Joseph said, okay, it's all right. It's going to be okay now. I'm not going to kill you. The question is, do you get the idea of this? Yeah.
What is the idea? The way that you could see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I follow the story, but
Right. Reuben said, kill my sons, you can keep my son. We need to take Joseph in order for everybody in the world, for all our family to survive this famine. There's just no question. We have to take Joseph. So you can kill my sons if I don't bring him back.
Benjamin, yeah.
That's what brother Reuben said.
Right.
But this is Judah, and Judah says, you can keep me as a slave in Egypt forever. Let the boy go back. And it's then that finally Joseph breaks down.
Right.
And because finally someone has kind of got that the children aren't killed or to sacrifice, right? They're not our possessions. Judah has total empathy for his father. He has total empathy for his brother. And it took this whole craziness for this to come around to this moment. And it is the fulfillment of the blessing that was promised in chapter 12, verse 3, where God said to Abraham, through you, you will be a blessing to the whole earth. Because the point of the Joseph story is that only by Joseph becoming a slave in Egypt and rising to prominence there, can the world be saved from this famine. The sense is that everybody would have died had he not made these storehouses and provided grain for the earth. The dark side of the story is that this is how Egypt's going to enslave everybody. I mentioned that a little earlier, that they're going to come and they're going to buy grain and then they're going to sell themselves. And that's how Israel ends up becoming slaves in Egypt. As the book of Exodus opens, when there was a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph, is how the chapter 1 of Exodus begins. But anyway, I see
So
this.
I do have a quick question.
Yeah, please.
So is the message supposed, would the characters in the story, now they've learned something, they've learned that children are not, to be bargained with this way and so forth. But if that hadn't happened, then everybody wouldn't have been saved. So how do you, kind of reconcile that?
Right. It's a messy story.
Yeah.
It-
I just.
It raises as many questions as it answers. I mean, the idea of God killing Onan and Onan's first brother for no reason. I mean, it doesn't set well. obviously somebody has taken old stories and retold them. And
I'm just trying to figure out what the lesson is they're supposed to learn, because it's kind of like when you know better, you do better, as Maya Angelou says. And, you know, I don't know what lesson they would take from this.
Right.
Because it worked out correctly with all this.
it's possible that there, like I said, there is this seam between chapter 37 and 39 before we get the whole Judah and Tamar story. And it could be that there was a story that predates this in which there is no Judah empathy kind of thing going on. It's just the Joseph story, Joseph being a dreamer who somehow saves the world by preserving enough grain so everybody can survive. But I think somebody saw the connection with the stories, but I don't know what people saw. But by seeing the Judah and Tamar narrative thrown there in the middle, and saying, okay, this is Judah. What does he learn from trying to preserve his son's life, and realizing he did a disservice to his former daughter-in-law? What do we make of that in light of all the stories in Genesis? And it seems to fit beautifully with where we start with Cain and Abel, and where we go next into Abram, and what it means for Abraham's progeny to be a blessing to the Lord. Yeah, what does it mean for how we live?
Mhm.
Any answers to that?
So the idea of 38 is that Judah has learned something, and so when he goes to Egypt, he's the one who gets it.
Yeah, if anybody's gonna stand up and say, take me, yeah, and the importance of that only works because Reuben says before that, Lord of Pharaoh, or dad, Jacob, before he goes to Egypt, you can take my two sons and kill them if you want. If I don't bring Benjamin back. That's like the worst thing that could have happened. But obviously no one would have learned a thing if that was the last word of the story, and it's not.
I've often wondered in this story if Joseph all along his intent was to teach his brothers a lesson, or if he
Right.
truly intended to enslave one of them or Benjamin until, you know, Judah whispers in his ear and think about what this would mean for your father. I personally have always thought he intended to do the right thing all along.
Yeah.
And this-
You get that when he breaks down and says, is my father still living?
And he sends the money back with them. He
Yeah.
doesn't charge them for the claim.
Right, but he's also doing this scummy thing by, incriminating them. Yeah, I mean, that ends up being his way of saying, oh, what are you doing? You're spies.
Oh, he had a plot. He
Yeah,
was
plot.
clever.
You have an interesting plot, right? Which makes the story worth telling and retelling. Right? What it means to the whole of the Bible. Yeah, I think there is that sense that, there is the temptation always to think of children as not particularly important, as eminently replaceable. One child doesn't work, somebody else will fill in.
But maybe you should sell one of your sons to somewhere else so that you can save the world. Yes.
Well, I think the larger, the
Some
larger
brothers.
the larger view is they're all sacred. And Jesus, I think, does a better job of valuing children than this. But under the circumstances, looking at the culture involved, this is a fairly sophisticated and emotionally warm story compared to some that we could have had instead. You look at the Gilgamesh epic, It's terrifying. Anyway, any other questions, concerns, matters?
I think this story certainly answers the question. Yes, we are our brother's keeper.
Right. That's it. Thank you for saying that, because it's
Yes.
the most important thing to consider. Yeah. Yeah, if there's any doubt, we are. And brother, the sense of brother is wider than we'd imagine. Okay. Thanks for hanging in there, Dee. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, if you have any comments, feel free to unmute yourself and say something because we could hear you.
And thanks for recording it. It's a pretty complicated story. Yeah, and I, at one point I thought, oh, maybe I should go a PhD in Hebrew studies, then I take this and work with it, but life happens. It never worked, but it's fun to bring it out once in a while. I think it's a fascinating story. Okay, thanks much. We'll see what adult ed does next, right?